I'm Dan, and you've seemed to have stumbled upon Dan Does. It's the middle of March 2020, and if you know anything, you know that the majority of the country is under a shelter-in-place type of quarantine. Well, during this time, we need to find things to keep ourselves happy and sane. One of those things for me is cooking. And although Dan Does will hopefully take off and cover many things that I enjoy, for now we're going to dive into cooking. You may learn some things, and you may yell at your screen that I'm doing something completely wrong. That's all fine. Throughout my videos, I'll make plenty of mistakes, and that gives me the opportunity to try and show you how to deal with mishaps along the way. Anyway, I hope you enjoy. In this episode, we're going to look at ribs, and not any old ribs, beef back ribs. They're the beef version of pork baby back ribs. Since we're dealing with beef, I'm going to use a Texas-style rub that I normally use for brisket. Traditionally, this rub consists of equal parts kosher salt and coarse ground pepper. One thing to note here is if you substitute table salt for kosher salt, which is fine, you'll want to use half the amount of salt because table tends to be much saltier than kosher. Now, I don't typically just find a recipe and leave it alone, and what I like to add to this rub is an equal part of garlic powder for an extra flavor kick. Once you've got everything into the bowl, you can use a whisk to mix it up. Alternatively, you can put everything into a sealed container and shake it really good. You see there that I've got some lumps in my garlic powder. I'm going to have to get in there with my hands and break that up. Also, my bowl is a little too small to really get the whisk going, so it's just easier. On a side note, those lumps can mean a couple of different things. It happens sometimes because of humidity, especially if you don't have a good seal on your container. This here, however, I'm fairly certain is because the spice is old. Some spices will cake when they get older, but most importantly, spices start to lose their flavor as they get older. They're still safe to eat, but they just don't have that punch anymore. So get yourself a Sharpie, store it with your spices, and anytime you bring new spices into your kitchen, write the date on them. After a year, it's time to replace them. Anyway, back to the ribs. The first thing you're going to do is remove the membrane from the back side of the ribs. This is not completely necessary, but many pitmasters believe that it lets the smoke penetrate the meat better. Also, the membrane is not that pleasant to chew on. Sometimes you can just grab on and go, and other times you need to use a knife to get it started and really work to get rid of that membrane. This one was a little tough, but we finally got it done. Once you've gotten rid of the membranes, it's back to the rub. You want to completely cover every inch of the meat, making sure that you get the rub into all the little nooks and crannies. If you're following along at home, you probably want to use about a third of what I'm using because these things came out salty. They weren't inedible, they were just heavy-handed for what I like. My wife enjoyed them, but said they probably didn't need that much rub. Once you've rubbed down all your racks, cover them and let them sit in the fridge for 2 to 3 hours. This will let the rub penetrate and marinate the meat some before they go on the smoker. Now that the ribs have had a good cold rest, we're actually going to cook them 2 ways. We'll smoke 2 racks and do the other 2 in the oven. I know everyone in Memphis is saying, "Oh my God, how could you do that to ribs?" Well, you know what? Not everyone has a smoker. So if you don't have a smoker, you can make ribs too. So the first set is going to go in the oven that has been preheated to 250 degrees. They're going to be in there for about 3.5 to 5 hours. We're looking for a final temp of 210 degrees. The other set is going to go on the smoker. The smoker should be running at about 275 degrees. Now, the thermometer on my smoker has been broken for years, so I just kind of guess. Cooking is sometimes guerrilla warfare for me, so you gotta do what you gotta do. So we've got both sets of ribs going, and other than checking temp and making sure our fire is still going the way we want, we just have to wait. Okay, I'm just checking the temp of the meat. You need to make sure that you're testing the center of the meat vertically, and you don't want your probe touching a bone. If you go too deep or too shallow, or if you're touching a bone, it'll give you a false reading. We need to get to 210, so we still got a ways to go. It's been about 4.5 hours and the ribs from the oven are done. After a 10-minute rest, they're cutting really nice. You see they're completely done, but not quite shreddy. And there it is. 2 hours later, and the ribs from the smoker are finally up to temp. The colder temps outside tonight were not helpful. I really needed to get my fire hotter, but we're here now. Since they had to cook longer, they got quite a bit darker. After 10 minutes, we can start to cut. You see here that because of the longer cooking time, there's more of that shreddy texture. And glamour shot. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, share, and check back for more of Dan Does.